Welcome once again to this edition of the Golden Rule, based on a verse in the Bible spoken by Jesus, which says we should treat other people the way we want them to treat us. And I'm so glad you tuned in today, whether you did it intentionally or accidentally. I don't believe there's any accidents. You're going to hear from God. He's here. He's in attendance. He's present here in this studio, in my living room. And he's also present wherever you're watching from. So keep your ears open that you might hear from him. I want to start out by asking, have you ever been in love or known somebody who was and they were kind of off the charts? They just couldn't stand to be away from their beloved for even a minute? Well, that happened to me when I met Sharon in August of '78. She came to the camp and we knew each other for 5 days, and I proposed to her. And then 2 weeks later, she takes off for Canada and I'm in Florida. Well, that's a dilemma of major proportions. I probably could have done well to become a major shareholder in the telephone company, because we were on the phone every night, sometimes for hours, more than 1 hour. And sometimes we wouldn't even be talking. We just kind of listened to each other breathe, or I don't know what the deal was, but we just wanted to be together, just an awareness of one another's presence. And you know, one of the ways we can express our love is through time. Time. And there's a problem that can arise in relationships between people when a couple gets married. Oh, you know, they're head over heels in love and everything is new and all that sort of stuff. But after a season, whatever, a year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, there's a potential for things to cool off and the fire to be not quite as bright. And that can be dangerous. We need to keep stirring those flames, to keep that flame alive. And God has the same concern with us. You know, when we first give our lives to Jesus, it's an exciting, exciting event, life-changing to the max. But Jesus talks to a church in Ephesus in Revelations chapter 2, verse 4. He says, I have something against you. You're doing a lot of good stuff, but I have something against you. You have left your first love. In other words, they weren't as enamored with Jesus himself as they were with all their religious activities. And it troubled him. It grieved him. And so we're going to be talking on this program about prayer. A word that kind of freaks some people out, turns some people off. It's simply a word that refers to conversation between man and God. It's just a conversation. It's nothing fancy. And sometimes we're told in the Bible that we should have a quiet time. What does that mean? That means just get alone with God. Like you want to get alone with your bride. You want to get alone, just you and God. Your quiet time. And that can be exercised in various ways. You can read the Bible. You can pray. You can just be quiet. Just absolutely be quiet and listen for God's voice, because he does speak today. You know, my mom and dad were married for 60 plus years, and they would go to Christian Retreat, Florida, which is a nice community, and they'd walk the streets hand in hand. 60 years married, and they're still holding hands as they walk down the street. And all the folks in the community used to say, isn't that cute? It was a whole lot more than cute. It was an expression of their love and appreciation for one another. And I feel sorry for married couples who they'll go walk someplace and he's 10 feet in front of her, or she's 10 feet in front of him, and you wouldn't even know unless you knew them that they're together. They're just walking. No, there needs to be togetherness. And another thing, a big misunderstanding about prayer is that Most people consider it as a time when you just show up and you say, okay, God, here's my list. And then you rattle off everything you want God to do like he's some kind of a celestial Santa Claus. And then you just take off. You don't even say hello or goodbye. It's just, boom, here's my list. No, that's not prayer. That's not prayer. Prayer is a two-way, give and take conversation. And one of the ways we hear from God is by reading the Bible. Just open the book and read. That's God speaking to you. It's his love letter from him personally to you personally, to us personally. And so it's vitally important, if you want to get to really know God, to read the Bible. Have you ever heard people make a statement that we want or we need change? Something has to change. Whether it's, most of the time you hear it in the realm of politics. We need change. Do you know what they're really saying without using the word? We need righteousness. Things are bad. But they don't analyze the bad in terms of sin or righteousness. They just say it's bad. But if they would study carefully what it is that's causing the bad, they would realize it's rooted in sin. And so Proverbs 14:34 says, righteousness exalts a nation, but sin is a reproach to any people. And Proverbs 29:2 says, when the righteous rule, the people rejoice. And so what we're really saying when we ask for change, we're saying that we need more righteousness in our land. You know, and this is what this program is all about from the get-go, causing Detroit Lakes to become a beacon of righteousness. That means more people would be doing the right things for the right reason and making God happy. And as we make God happy, then he makes us happy, and everybody around us is happy, and it's all happy, happy, happy. And that's what we want. So how do we do that? Well, in Luke 11, verse 1, the disciples said to Jesus, Lord, teach us to pray. Yeah. So we have to learn how to pray. It's not something that necessarily comes automatically. It's a lifestyle. It's a discipline that we have to practice. Like any other activity. If an athlete wants to be good at athletics, he has to practice, 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 practice. If a musician wants to be good at his particular instrument, he has to practice, 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 practice. That's all it is. Practice. If you want to be a good fisherman, you got to practice, practice, figure out all the factors that are involved, water temperatures and what kind of bugs are they eating and how deep is the water and how cold is the water and where is it located and all this kind of stuff. It's all about practice. And prayer is no different. The more you practice it, the better you get at it. It's just that simple. In Luke 18:1, Jesus said this, men ought always to pray and not to faint. Well, I can't picture myself fainting in prayer, but I can picture myself getting tired of it. So, this isn't much fun. I haven't really tapped in to true prayer, if that's my attitude. It's another verse in 1 Thessalonians 5:17 tells us to pray without ceasing. Now, how do you do that? It's simple. If you practice the presence of God, if you realize you don't just meet God when you go to a church building, you spend an hour or two there and say, oh, there I was in the presence of God. No, if you're a believer, when you walk out of the church, God walks out with you. He's in you. His presence is with you 24/7. And so when you're aware of that, it changes your whole life. You know, 1 Timothy 2, verse 1, Paul says to Timothy, I exhort you, that means I encourage you, I urge you, I beg you, I beseech you. I exhort you that first of all, prayers, supplications, intercession, and giving of thanks be made for all men, for kings, and for princes, and for those that are in authority. And then he tells us why. that we may lead a quiet and peaceable life in all godliness and honesty. God wants to have peace in our life. You can't imagine, maybe you can, or maybe you will begin to imagine what will happen in your own life when you get to the place, instead of belly aching about this politician or that politician or this husband or wife or child, instead of belly aching about all that. Oh, my pastor, I'm belly aching about my pastor. If you'd pray for these people, the people in authority, pray for them. Say, God bless them. I want to see them do well. I want to see them represent you well. And that's what we're praying when we say righteousness exalts a nation. We want a righteous ruler. That's what it's all about. If you have a righteous ruler, the people will be happy. You know, we have just had an experience here very recently where one of our former presidents died. His name was Jimmy Carter. He served one term of presidency in 1977 to 1981. And as I'm listening to the remembrances, they are overwhelmingly concerned with his character rather than with what he did right or what he did wrong. And he did both. So do we all. We all do some things right, we all do some things wrong. But they mention again and again his character. He always had a smile on his face. And it was real. It wasn't a pasted on thing, it was real. Jimmy Carter died at age 100. His wife died 2 years ago at age 96. They were married for 77 years. That's kind of like my mom and dad holding hands after being married for 60 years. This couple loved one another and they modeled that for the whole nation. That's a good role model to have. And after he got out of the White House, he went back home to the building they had lived in all their married life and lived in for 40 years after his tour in the White House. 40 years. A 2-bedroom ranch-style flat. It wasn't a mansion. It wasn't pretentious. There was nothing pretentious about this couple at all. But they did love God. In fact, many times, while he was president, the newspapers would make mention of the fact that on Sunday, Jimmy Carter went to church and taught Sunday school, which he did for 40 years after he was president. He was still teaching Sunday school when he was 90 years old because he had a heart for God. And he wasn't ashamed of that. He wasn't embarrassed by that. He wasn't reluctant to proclaim it, profess it openly. I'm a Christian. I love God. And I do my best to please Him. So, when he was inaugurated, the verse that he chose, the Bible verse for his inaugural speech, was Micah 6, verse 8, which says, God speaking, I have shown you, O man, what is good, and what does the Lord desire of you, but to do justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. And Jimmy Carter personified that, and I honor him for it. I thank him for it, and I pray that our next president will do the same thing, that he will draw people's attention to God, to reading the Bible, to prayer. In fact, he is doing that already. So I want to encourage you and remind you again that we're encouraging prayer throughout the city. At Christian Fellowship, we're having a Wednesday night prayer meeting every Wednesday night at 6:30. And you're welcome to come. Christian Fellowship, Highland Drive, just north of the Holiday Inn. Anybody is welcome to come. Thank you very much for tuning in today. I hope you found this to be an encouragement, and I hope it causes you to be more prayerful in your daily life. God bless you. Have a great, happy New Year. It's the day before New Year's when I'm recording this, so it'll be old news to you by the time you hear it. But Happy New Year anyway. God bless.